Hi chemists. Today's video is going to be on Bronstead-Lowry acids and bases. So let's get straight into this one. The first thing we're going to discuss is the actual Bronstead-Lowry theory. So according to this theory, a substance behaves like an acid when it donates a proton. Okay. Now I just want to get off the bat straight away. A proton is represented by H+. Okay, so a hydrogen ion, because hydrogen only has one proton and one electron. So a hydrogen ion would be losing that one electron, which is a proton left over. So you'll see this to donate a proton. So an acid will donate a proton to a base. A substance behaves as a base when it accepts a proton from an acid. So the simple representation of that is that acids are proton donors and bases are proton acceptors. So this explains why acids and bases neutralize each other with that neutralization reaction to form salt and water, because they're essentially the opposite of each other. Okay? So we're going to look at acid ionization. In previous videos we've discussed ionization. It's essentially the formation of charge. Okay? So it's a chemical reaction where the products are going to be charged, either positive cations or negative anions. Oh, I'm in the way here. So as protons are exchanged from an acid to a base, this definition explains why acids and bases react together, as I just mentioned previously. An example we're going to look at is a pretty common one. So we've got hydrogen chloride molecules, and we're going to show their ionization in water. So here's the equation that I've got. HCl, we commonly represent that as hydrochloric acid, but hydrogen chloride is usually in a solid form or in a gaseous form, and that's either dissolved or bubbled into water in order to produce hydrochloric acid. Okay, so in this instance we've got gaseous hydrogen chloride and we're bubbling it through liquid water. And when that happens, the acid is going to ionize, so we're going to get two charged products. We've got H3O+, which is referred to as a hydronium ion, and I'm going to chat a bit more about that a bit later. And we've got a chloride ion as well. Both of those species are aqueous in solution. My question to you is, which of these two reactants is acting as the acid? Now you probably already figure that HCl is going to be the acid, because you probably recognized it. And you're correct, but I'm going to explain why. HCl is the acid because that will donate a proton. Look at the products. Okay, which species looks similar to HCl? This one or this one? It's clearly the chloride ion. So HCl has lost H+ to become this new chloride ion. So it's donated a hydrogen ion to the water, which is going to form hydronium. So this is acting as the acid. Water in this case is acting as the base. The base is accepting protons, so this is going to accept one proton to form the hydronium ion. Okay? So in this reaction, you're going to have essentially all of the particles in this reaction forming the ionized products. Virtually no molecules of hydrogen chloride remain. This is because HCl is a strong acid, which we're going to go into in our next video lesson. So you're going to have pretty much complete ionization. We're going to look at acid-base conjugate pairs now. A conjugate pair is two species which differ by a proton. For the reaction between HCl and H2O, the conjugate pairs are shown as. So this is our reaction that we just looked at before. We want to identify the conjugate pairs, so the species that differ by a proton. I've pretty much just chatted about them in the previous section. So we know that that was the acid and that was the base. Okay. What are the conjugate pairs? So in the products, which reactant do they pair up with? Now, that's my poorly drawn line there. We've got these two connected to each other because those two species differ by one proton. Okay. Now if that's an acid, then this species is going to be a base, because if that reaction was reversed, this would accept a proton to become this again. So it's going to be the opposite of the conjugate. Okay? So acid-base conjugate pairs, the two species that differ by a proton, and then they're going to be opposite in terms of acidic or basic properties. So the leftover is going to be these ones. Now this one's a base, the hydronium is going to be an acid, okay? Because if this reaction, like I said, was reversed, then this would be donating a proton. Just a quick mention of the hydrogen ion. Now this can be represented in two different ways. It can be represented as hydronium, so H3O+, or you can see it represented as H+. They both are called the hydronium ion, okay? The hydronium ion attracts water molecules to it, so it kind of draws other water molecules in solution to it, and it becomes more hydrated. But those water molecules aren't as strongly attracted, okay? I just want to show you what it looks like. So this is your normal water molecule, and this is your hydronium. So extra hydrogen added, and you've got a positive charge here, okay, due to limited or less electrons. Okay, so this is what we're representing with the hydronium. Alright, I've just had some feedback that I'm saying okay a lot. So if I say that one more time in the video, just tell me off. I was almost going to say it then, but I didn't. So we're going to go into acid-base conjugate pairs now. So just another example. So as we've just discussed, a conjugate pair is two species that differ by a proton. And just remember that an acid is a proton donor and a base is a proton acceptor. So here's a new reaction. We've got NH3. What's NH3? Did you say ammonia? Hopefully you did. We've got ammonia and we've got water again. And the formation, the products, we have an ammonium ion and a hydroxide ion. So we've got that ionization once again. Now which of these reactants is the acid and which one is the base? Have a guess, have a think. Hopefully you said that NH3 is acting as a base because this is receiving a proton to form the ammonium ion. And therefore water has to be acting as the acid. I'm just going to draw the line to the conjugate pair. So if this is the base, then the other part of the pair has to be the acid. Whew. And the other two species match up. This is our second acid-base conjugate pair. Water is acting as the acid, therefore hydroxide ion would be the base. We've got kind of a blurry diagram here, just listing common acids and bases. A lot of these species we do want to become familiar with for the acid-base topic. So going through the acids, we've probably seen the majority of these before. Hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid. We've got a hydronium ion, which will donate a proton as well. This one, CH3COOH, is a pretty common one. This is acetic acid or ethanoic acid, and this is found in vinegar. Carbonic acid, phosphoric acid, we've got the ammonium ion, we've got hydrogen carbonate, and water, which is an interesting one, which we're going to discuss a little bit later. Over on the right-hand side, once they lose their proton, these are the species that are going to be formed. So this is the conjugate base to these common acids. And here we've got a whole section of bases as well. Hydroxide, ammonia, a carbonate ion, phosphate ion. So you can see that sometimes you can have the species being charged. They don't always have to be uncharged molecules. So you can have differences with that. Carbonate, phosphate ion, the acetate ion, and we've got an oxygen ion. And then once they accept protons, we've got their conjugate acids on the right hand side here. So take the time to have a look at this diagram and study it. The next section is on amphiprotic substances. Amphiprotic. So the way that I explain this is an amphibian, you might think of a frog, can exist or can hang out in both land and water. An amphiprotic substance can behave as both an acid and a base. So they can donate or accept protons depending on what they're actually reacting with. Water is the most common amphiprotic substance. So, as we've seen in the previous two reactions, that can act as both an acid or a base, depending on what other species are present. If the solute is a stronger acid than water, then water will react as the base. But if the solute is a stronger base, then water will react as an acid. So, like I said, it depends what it's pairing with. This here is a list of amphiprotic substances. Water is the most common, but we've got hydrogen carbonate, which is also one we're going to have a look at, and a few other ions here too. This one is a little negative ion as well. If they accept protons, that means they're acting as a base. Oh, almost got muddled up there. And then if they're losing protons, they're going to be acting as an acid. So here's our last little bit that we'll go through, an example of an amphiprotic substance. So we've got this species here. Do you know the name of this one? This one's a hydrogen carbonate ion. And we've got water as well. First of all, we're going to have water acting as the acid and HCO3- acting as the base. Try to pause the video and write out what you think the products will be. When I say try to pause, it's not hard to pause, but give it a go. Hopefully this is what you came up with. So the acid is going to donate a proton to form hydroxide, and the base is going to accept the proton to form hydrogen carbonate or carbonic acid. Now we're going to swap. So we're going to have the hydrogen carbonate ion acting as an acid and the water acting as a base. You might think, how does that work? They're both amphiprotic, so it depends which has the stronger concentration as to which way these reactions are going to go. So again, try and predict what's going to happen. So this time, the acid is going to donate the proton, so that's going to form a carbonate ion, and the water is going to accept the proton, which will form the hydronium ion. So both of these substances are amphiprotic. Now generally, if this reaction is going to occur, one of these two is going to occur to a greater extent. And we can measure the dominant reaction by measuring the pH of the solution. And you can measure pH by using a variety of indicators. Now what these indicators do is they change colour, so your phenolphthalein, methyl orange, litmus paper, there's a whole bunch that we've used in class. And they work by measuring the concentration of hydrogen ions or hydronium in solution. The more that there is, the more acidic the substance will be. Guys, thanks very much for watching this video. I look forward to seeing you in class and seeing how we can work on some acid-base reactions.